Zephyra Ursa, emissary of the Sha'Nari, felt the ancient storm within her fracture the sacred calm of Xylos, her catastrophic loss of control at the anti-piracy coalition summit igniting a crisis that only the tormented genius, exo-linguist Jericho Code, might begin to comprehend, both unaware that their shared ordeal was but a prelude to devastating betrayals that would bind them irrevocably across the void. The air in the Grand Assembly Hall on Xylos, usually thick with the scent of cultivated moon orchids, and the murmur of 100 alien tongues, now crackled with an unnatural energy. Outside the panoramic plasteel windows, the normally serene azure sky of the colony world churned with bruised purples and angry grays, a tempest that had sprung from nowhere, mirroring the chaos erupting within the Sha'Nari delegation's designated alcove. Jericho Code, clutching his datapad with white-knuckled intensity, watched from the periphery. His station, a modest console overflowing with linguistic analysis software and half-eaten nutrient bars, was usually his refuge. Today it felt like the eye of a storm. He was supposed to be monitoring cross-species communication flows, flagging potential misunderstandings for the coalition's nascent diplomatic corps. Instead, his attention, like everyone else's, was riveted on the source of the atmospheric disturbance, the Sha'Nari ambassador, Zephyra Ursa. She stood, a figure of usually breathtaking elegance, her skin like polished, iridescent opal, now flickering erratically through shades of bruised violet and feverish crimson. The metallic sheen of her form, which normally reflected the hall's soft lighting with a cool, collected grace, now seemed to pulse with an inner heat, the air around her shimmering. Her species, the Sha'Nari, were known for their empathic connection to planetary energies, some even capable of influencing local weather patterns, a gift of profound responsibility. What was unfolding looked less like influence and more like a catastrophic meltdown. The wind howled outside, rattling the massive dome, and a sudden, violent downpour, laced with hailstones the size of a human thumb, began to hammer against the transparent roof, drowning out the panicked shouts. Jericho, a man whose mind thrived on patterns and whose nerves frayed at their disruption, felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. This wasn't just a diplomatic incident, this was an anomaly of terrifying proportions. Zephyra Ursa was renowned for her composure. Her role as a species diplomat, whispered about in xenolinguistic circles, her very biology supposedly capable of bridging communication gulfs where standard translators faltered. Now, she was a conduit for elemental fury. He saw her hands clench, her usually serene features contorted in a silent scream. The intricate crystalline ornaments woven into her metallic hair, rumored to be echo crystals, carrying the memories of her ancestors, seemed to dim and flare with the erratic atmospheric discharges. Security personnel, a mix of human enforcers in heavy carapace armor and a few hulking, four-armed Grokner guards, were closing in, their weapons raised hesitantly. Fear was a universal language, Jericho noted grimly, his mind cataloging their tensed postures, their widened optical sensors. He saw the leader of the human security detail, Commander Valerius, barking orders, his face grim. Misunderstanding here could trigger an interstellar war before the anti-piracy coalition even signed its charter. "Stand down? She's not hostile, she's uncontrolled." Jericho found himself shouting, his voice thin against the rising cacophony. He pushed himself away from his console, a reckless act for a man who preferred the safety of intellectual distance. Valerius shot him a glare that could curdle synth milk. "Code, get back to your station! This is a Class 1 security breach." But Jericho's gaze was fixed on Zephyra. He saw more than just a dangerous alien losing control. He saw a flicker of profound distress, a desperate plea in the way her opalescent skin rippled. His specialty wasn't just translating words, but deciphering the deeper currents of communication, the nuances lost on most. And every instinct, every analytical pathway in his tormented, genius brain, screamed that this was not aggression. This was agony. The storm outside intensified, lightning cracking with deafening concussions that made the entire structure groan. Inside, lights flickered, and a section of the decorative ceiling panels tore loose, crashing near the Andorian delegation, who scattered with chirps of alarm. Zephyra sank to her knees, her body trembling violently. The iridescent colors of her skin swirled like a dying star, then settled into a dull, pewter gray, almost matte, a sign Jericho intuited of extreme energy depletion or profound shock. The temperature around her, which had been scorching, plummeted, a fine layer of frost instantly crystallizing on the polished floor beneath her. "Commander, please." Jericho urged, stepping forward despite the armed guards now forming a tighter cordon. Her species can influence weather. This is a biological feedback loop, likely triggered by extreme stress. If you attack her, you'll only make it worse. He tried to channel the calm authority he rarely felt. His neurotic mind raced, cataloging Sha'Nari physiological data he'd poured over years ago, searching for a precedent, a solution. Valerius hesitated, his weapon still aimed but his finger easing off the trigger. Stress. She's tearing the sky apart. Code? What kind of stress does that? The kind that could destabilize this entire summit. Jericho muttered. Then louder. Her role here. The pressure, perhaps something in the local atmosphere, an unexpected interaction. He was grasping at straws, but he needed to buy time. He saw a small, crystalline shard fall from Zephyra's hair, an echo crystal. If he could just reach her, perhaps understand the source of her distress. Suddenly, a section of the Sha'Nari delegation, led by a stern-faced male named Kalen whose skin was the color of burnished bronze, stepped forward. Kalen's voice, when he spoke, was resonant and cold. Commander Valerius, the Sha'Nari regret this aberration. Ambassador Ursa is unwell. We will take custody of her and withdraw from the summit immediately. His words were clipped, devoid of the usual Sha'Nari melodic cadence. It sounded like a condemnation. Zephyra looked up, her pewter skin flickering faintly, a trace of amethyst light returning as she focused on Kalen. A low moan, almost a growl, escaped her. It wasn't just physical pain in that sound. Jericho heard betrayal. Before Valerius could respond, a priority alert flashed on his wrist comm. He listened intently, his face growing even more severe. Code? He snapped, his attention shifting abruptly. The High Council just red-flagged you. Orders are to detain you. Conspiracy to aid a potentially hostile alien entity. What in the void have you gotten yourself into? Jericho stared, dumbfounded. Detain me. For what? I'm trying to prevent an incident. This was absurd. His superiors knew his loyalty, his dedication, even if they found his methods unconventional and his personality challenging. Simultaneously, Kalen's guards moved towards Zephyra, not with care, but with a chilling efficiency, their hands reaching for what looked like neural dampeners. Zephyra recoiled, a fresh wave of chaotic energy flaring around her, pushing them back. The storm outside responded with a renewed, ear-splitting roar. It was clear her own people were not there to help, but to subdue, perhaps to silence. The moment was a fractured mirror reflecting twin betrayals. Jericho accused by his own, Zephyra seemingly abandoned and targeted by hers. In that instant of shared crisis, their eyes met across the chaos. Hers, luminous and desperate, no longer just alien but filled with a recognizable terror. His, wide with disbelief and a dawning, horrified understanding. He was an exo-linguist, a reader of signs. And the signs were screaming they were both in imminent danger, from forces far more organized than a runaway weather phenomenon. We need to leave, Jericho said, his voice suddenly calm, the neurotic static in his brain momentarily silenced by the sheer, overwhelming clarity of their predicament. He didn't know how or where, but the instinct for survival and a strange, unexpected surge of protectiveness towards the alien woman overrode everything else. Zephyra, hearing his words, her dulled skin faintly shimmering as if gathering a last reserve of energy, slowly nodded. The storm outside, as if sensing a shift in her focus, momentarily abated, the wind's howl dropping to a mournful sigh. The initial blast that tore through the side of the assembly hall wasn't from Zephyra's uncontrolled power, nor was it from the Xylos security forces. It was precise, targeted, and utterly devastating. A beam of emerald energy sliced through the plasteel wall, sending superheated debris and panicked diplomats flying. Through the smoking gash, Jericho saw the sleek, obsidian forms of unfamiliar attack craft hovering against the roiling, storm-racked sky. They bore no insignia he recognized, but their silent, predatory grace spoke of advanced, ruthless technology. Veridian Shroud. Someone screamed, the name whispered in fearful tones across the darker corners of the Galactic net, a shadowy organization rumored to deal in suppressed truths and manufactured realities. Jericho had dismissed them as conspiracy theories, the paranoid ramblings of data miners with too much time. The searing reality of their attack vaporized that dismissal. In the ensuing chaos, Valerius and his men were instantly engaged, returning fire at the attackers. Kalen and his Sha'Nari guards, momentarily stunned, also turned to face this new, external threat, their earlier intent to subdue Zephyra forgotten in the immediate fight for survival. This was Jericho's chance. He lunged towards Zephyra, ducking under a stray energy bolt that vaporized the spot where his console had stood. "Zephyra, come with me! We can't stay here." She was still on her knees, but her head was up. The pewter of her skin now shot through with streaks of defiant silver. She looked at him, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes, surprise, perhaps, or the dawning of a desperate trust. She reached out a hand, her metallic fingers cool but surprisingly strong, and grasped his arm. The touch sent a peculiar tingle through him, not unpleasant, almost invigorating. They are not Sha'Nari," she whispered, her voice raspy, indicating the attackers. And Callan, he knew. He was expecting something. The betrayal by her own kind clearly cut deeper than the external attack. "No time for explanations," Jericho urged, pulling her to her feet. She was surprisingly light, yet her presence felt immensely powerful, like holding onto a barely contained star. "There's a service tunnel system beneath the main concourse. I mapped it, old habit." His neurotic need for contingency plans was finally paying off. They move a strange pair amidst the firefight. Jericho, wary and agile despite his bookish nature, navigated through the panicked crowds and debris. Zephyra, though weakened, moved with an innate grace, her iridescent skin flaring occasionally as stray energy blasts came too close, deflecting minor impacts with shimmering, almost invisible force fields. The storm she had inadvertently created still raged outside, but it seemed less chaotic now, almost as if it were a protective cloak around the besieged hall, hindering the Shroud attackers as much as Xylos' defenses. As they reached a maintenance hatch marked with faded glyphs only a dedicated linguist would bother to decipher, Jericho glanced back. He saw Callan directing his Sha'Nari guards, not against the Shroud, but to cut off their escape route. Their betrayal was absolute. Simultaneously, he saw Commander Valerius, pinned down by Shroud fire, gesture angrily in Jericho's direction, clearly ordering his remaining men to apprehend them if they got the chance. Human and Sha'Nari alike, their supposed protectors, now saw them as liabilities, or worse, enemies. "They're coming for us," Zephyra murmured, her voice gaining a little strength. Her skin warmed slightly against his grip, a subtle shift from pewter towards a pale, moonlit silver, both sides. "Then we give them neither," Jericho said, wrenching open the hatch. A blast of cool, recycled air hit them. He helped her down into the narrow, dimly lit tunnel. "There's an old transport hub on the outskirts of the capital, abandoned since the new hyperlanes were established. If we can get there, we might find a ship." Their escape from the summit was a desperate, adrenaline-fueled blur. The service tunnels were a labyrinth, but Jericho's meticulous, if somewhat obsessive, study of Xylos' infrastructure guided them. They could hear the muffled sounds of combat above, the distant thrum of explosions. Twice, they narrowly avoided security patrols sweeping the lower levels. During one such encounter, forced into a cramped alcove, Zephyra's shoulder brushed against his. Her skin, though metallic, was not cold. It radiated a subtle warmth, and for a moment, in the dim light, he saw the intricate patterns of her iridescence shift, like oil on water, a mesmerizing display that hinted at the complex biology beneath. He quickly looked away, a flush rising to his cheeks, entirely out of place given their life-threatening situation. His neurotic mind, however, filed away the observation Sha'Nari's skin temperature varies, possibly with emotional state or ambient conditions. Fascinating and distracting. They emerged into the pre-dawn gloom of Xylos' industrial periphery, the air thick with the smell of ozone from the ongoing atmospheric battle above, and the metallic tang of nearby factories. The abandoned transport hub was a decaying skeleton of permacrete and rusted gantries, eerily silent save for the mournful whistle of the wind through broken windows. "This way," Jericho whispered, leading her towards a cluster of dilapidated hangars. "Most of these ships will be wrecks, but there was one surveyor craft, a long-range model, listed as mothballed but structurally sound. I flagged it in my worst-case scenario files." Zephyra stumbled slightly, her breath catching. The energy drain, it was severe. Her skin was back to a dull, lusterless gray. She leaned against a crumbling wall, her eyes closed for a moment. "Callan," he used a resonance dampener during the initial disturbance. Subtle. Designed to disrupt Sha'Nari energy fields. He wanted me to lose control. Jericho felt a surge of anger on her behalf. Why would he do that? Why would your own people betray you? She opened her eyes, their depths holding a universe of sorrow. There are factions within the Sha'Nari conclave. Some believe our gifts make us too vulnerable to outsiders, or too tempting a target. They advocate for isolation, for suppressing abilities like mine. Kalen is a proponent of this silent path. He saw this summit, my role in it, as a dangerous overreach. Her voice was flat, heavy with the weight of this treachery. She reached into a hidden fold of her metallic garments and pulled out a single, unbroken echo crystal. It pulsed with a soft, cerulean light. This holds the mandate of my true purpose, the hopes of those who believe in connection, not severance. She pressed it into his hand. The moment his fingers closed around the cool, smooth crystal, a wave of sensation washed over Jericho. Not just images, but emotions, profound and layered, a deep yearning for understanding, a fierce dedication to peace, the quiet sorrow of an ancient lineage facing a difficult future. He saw glimpses of Sha'Nari cities, crystalline structures harmonizing with landscapes of breathtaking alien beauty. He felt Zephyra's unwavering commitment to her mission, the weight of expectation, and then a sharp, piercing sense of Kalen's duplicity, like a shard of ice in the heart. The experience lasted only a second, but it forged an immediate, visceral connection to her, deeper than any words could achieve. He pulled his hand back, gasping slightly. "Echo crystals," she said softly, a faint shimmer of silver returning to her cheeks as she saw his reaction. "They carry the essence of memory, of intent. Now you understand a little?" "I do," Jericho stammered, his mind reeling. This was beyond any linguistic data he'd ever encountered. This was shared experience. He looked at her with new eyes. She wasn't just an alien ambassador, she was a living conduit of her people's soul. Their search for the surveyor craft was punctuated by the distant sounds of pursuit. Searchlights crisscrossed the stormy sky. They found the ship, the Stardust Drifter, tucked away in the darkest corner of the largest hangar, coated in dust but otherwise intact. It was an older model, rugged and utilitarian, not designed for speed or combat, but for endurance. "Pre-flight checks will take time," Jericho said, already accessing the ship's archaic interface panel. "The power cells are depleted, but there's a solar trickle charge system. It might have enough for engine ignition if we can reroute auxiliary power." His fingers flew across the controls, his earlier anxiety replaced by focused intensity. This was his element complex system's logical problems. While Jericho worked, Zephyra stood watch, her posture regaining some of its former regal bearing despite her exhaustion. Her iridescence was slowly returning, shifting from gray to a pale lavender, then to a soft rose gold as the ship's emergency lights flickered on. She touched a bulkhead, her fingers tracing the cold metal, and Jericho noticed a faint warmth spread from her touch, melting a patch of frost that had condensed there. A life sculptor, the rumors had said, able to promote healing or growth. Perhaps that extended to machinery, in some small way, or perhaps it was just his overwrought imagination. Suddenly, a section of the hangar roof above them exploded inwards. Shrapnel rained down. Figures rappelled from the darkness, Veridian Shroud operatives, clad in their signature black armor, their movements unnervingly silent and swift. They had found them. "They're here," Zephyra cried, spinning to face the attackers. A wave of kinetic energy, tinged with blue lightning, erupted from her outstretched hands, not a chaotic blast, but a focused shield that deflected the first volley of stun bolts. The effort cost her skin dimmed back to a stressed silver. "Almost got it," Jericho yelled, bypassing a final diagnostic. "Engine sequence initiated. Hold them off." Zephyra stood her ground, a lone shimmering figure against the encroaching darkness. She was no warrior, but her control, born of desperation, was growing. She manipulated the air currents within the hangar, creating miniature whirlwinds that disoriented the attackers, buying Jericho precious seconds. One operative got too close, lunging with an energy blade. Zephyra sidestepped with surprising agility, and a pulse of raw atmospheric pressure slammed him into a support pillar, crumpling his armor. The Stardust Drifter's engine sputtered, coughed, then roared to life with a deep, resonant hum. "Get in," Jericho shouted, pulling open the cockpit hatch. Zephyra unleashed one last, desperate blast of charged particles, scattering the Shroud agents, then stumbled back towards the ship. Jericho reached out, grabbing her arm, and pulled her inside. He slammed the hatch shut just as energy fire scored deep gouges across the ancient hull. He strapped himself in, his hands already a blur on the navigation and thrust controls. Zephyra collapsed into the co-pilot seat, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her metallic skin almost entirely devoid of light, like tarnished silver. "Hold on," Jericho yelled as he slammed the throttle forward. The Stardust Drifter, protesting with groans and shudders, lurched out of the hangar, smashing through the dilapidated main doors and ascending into the turbulent, lightning-streaked sky of Xylos. Shroud fighters, like angry hornets, immediately gave chase, their emerald energy beams lancing through the storm clouds. Their escape from Xylos was only the beginning of their harrowing journey. The Stardust Drifter, old and outmatched, was relentlessly pursued by the Veridian Shroud. Jericho, pushing his piloting skills and the ship's ancient engines to their absolute limits, wove them through asteroid fields, dived into the swirling chaos of nebulae, and skimmed the coronas of unstable stars, anything to shake their pursuers. Zephyra, recovering slowly, proved to be an invaluable co-pilot. Her innate understanding of atmospheric and spatial phenomena allowed her to anticipate gravitic shears and energy fluxes that would have torn a lesser ship apart. Her skin, a barometer of her well-being and the ambient energy around them, shifted through a mesmerizing palette of colors, from the cool blues and greens of focused concentration during complex maneuvers, to flashes of alarmed crimson when shroud weapons locked onto them. They were forced into prolonged, intense proximity, sharing the cramped confines of the Stardust Drifter's cockpit and small living quarters. Days bled into weeks. The initial awkwardness born of their disparate origins and the trauma of their betrayal slowly began to erode, replaced by a grudging, then growing respect. Jericho, usually lost in his own pensive thoughts and prone to fits of neurotic anxiety, found a strange calm in Zephyra's presence. Her quiet strength, the way she faced each new crisis with a resilience that belied her delicate appearance, was a steadying anchor. He, in turn, with his tormented genius, was the only one who could keep their battered ship flying, deciphering cryptic shroud communications they occasionally intercepted, and plotting increasingly desperate escape routes. During one particularly grueling chase through a dense debris field, a rogue asteroid fragment pierced the drifter's secondary hull, causing a localized decompression. Jericho, struggling to seal the breach while alarms blared, slashed his arm on a jagged piece of metal. The wound was deep, bleeding profusely. Zephyra, seeing his plight, rushed to his side. Without a word, she placed her hand over the injury. Her skin, now a warm, vibrant gold, pulsed with a soft light. Jericho felt an intense, soothing warmth spread through his arm. The bleeding stopped almost instantly, and the throbbing pain receded to a dull ache. He stared in amazement as she drew her hand away. The gash was still there, but it looked days old, already beginning to knit closed. Life sculptor, he breathed, remembering the term. Zephyra nodded, a faint blush of rose appearing on her opalescent cheeks. A small gift. It draws on my own energy, but you needed it. She looked tired, the golden light fading from her skin, leaving it a pale, almost translucent silver. Thank you, Jericho said, his voice hoarse with emotion. It was more than just gratitude for the healing. It was awe, and a profound sense of connection. This being, so alien, had saved him. Tended to him with a gentleness he hadn't experienced in years. He found himself studying the intricate, almost imperceptible patterns on her skin, the way light fractured and danced across its surface. It was beautiful not in a sterile, metallic way, but with an organic, living vibrancy. In the quieter moments between crises they talked. Jericho, normally reserved, found himself opening up to her, speaking of his fascination with the myriad ways life communicated across the cosmos, the loneliness of a mind that saw patterns others missed, the lingering shadow of a past research project that had been twisted and used for purposes he abhorred, leading to his current tormented state. Zephyra, in turn, shared more about the Sha'Nari. She spoke of her homeworld, Shan, a planet of crystalline mountains and sentient forests, where weather was not just a phenomenon but a language, a shared consciousness. She explained the eco-crystals in greater detail. They weren't just passive recorders, but empathic resonators, capable of imprinting and transmitting not just memories, but skills, emotional states, even raw knowledge. Each Sha'Nari carried crystals significant to their lineage or profession. A warrior's crystal might impart combat reflexes, a scholar's deep understanding of a specific field. Her own most treasured crystal, the cerulean one she had shown him, contained the collective wisdom and aspirations of generations of Sha'Nari diplomats committed to interspecies understanding. Kaylin and the Silent Path believed these connections, these empathic extensions of ourselves, are a weakness. She explained, her voice tinged with sorrow. They fear being diluted or exploited. They would see our people turn inward, severing the very ties that make us who we are. That sounds like a slow death, Jericho observed, his pensive nature drawn to the philosophical implications. To deny your fundamental nature. It is, Zephyra affirmed. That is why I could not yield to him. Why I had to try even if I failed so spectacularly at the summit. One cycle, while hiding in the shadow of a gas giant whose magnetosphere played havoc with Shroud sensors, they intercepted a fragmented, heavily encrypted Shroud transmission. Jericho spent hours deciphering it, his neurotic focus absolute. They're not just after us, Zephyra. He finally said, his face grim. They're searching for something called the Nexus of Realities, and they believe a Mind Hive Core is the key to controlling it. Zephyra's iridescence flared with a sudden, sharp violet. Nexus of Realities. Such a place is spoken of only in our oldest, most esoteric echo crystals. A point where the veils between dimensions are thin, a source of immense power and immense danger. And this Mind Hive Core, Jericho pressed. I don't know, she admitted. The term is unfamiliar, but if it's connected to the Nexus, the Shroud's interest is terrifying. They deal in illusion, in controlling narratives. Imagine what they could do with the power to reshape reality itself. The stakes had just escalated exponentially. They weren't just fugitives anymore. They were accidental guardians of a secret that could unravel the fabric of existence. Their forced cooperation was morphing into a genuine partnership, forged in shared danger and deepening understanding. Jericho found himself increasingly captivated by Zephyra. Her intellect was as sharp as her empathic abilities were profound. She learned the Stardust Drifter's systems with astonishing speed, her suggestions often providing elegant solutions to complex technical problems. He began to see beyond her alienness to the fierce, compassionate woman beneath the shimmering, metallic skin. The romantic tension, unspoken but palpable, grew with each shared glance across the cockpit, each moment of accidental touch in the cramped confines. He became acutely aware of the subtle shifts in her skin's temperature, the way her iridescence deepened to a soft rose when he paid her a compliment, or the cool silver it became when she was worried. He, in turn, found his usual anxiety soothed by her calm presence, his often fragmented thoughts finding a strange clarity when she was near. One evening, after narrowly evading a Shroud patrol by navigating through a treacherous ion storm, a feat only possible due to Zephyra's ability to sense and predict the chaotic energy currents, they found themselves adrift in a pocket of calm space, the stars outside blazing with fierce, remote beauty. The ship was battered, resources were dwindling, and their chances of survival seemed slim. Jericho was at the navigation console, tracing potential routes, his brow furrowed in concentration, a familiar line of worry etched between his eyes. Zephyra approached him, her skin a soft, pearlescent white like moonlight on snow. She carried 2 ration packs and a bulb of purified water. You need to rest, Jericho, she said softly. You've been at this for 18 standard hours. He sighed, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. The Shroud are relentless, and this Nexus, if what you say is true, all the more reason to conserve your strength, she insisted, placing the rations beside him. She hesitated, then her fingers, cool and metallic, gently touched his temple. Your mind is a storm of its own. Let it be still just for a moment. Her touch was electric. Not a shock, but a current of profound calm that seemed to flow directly into his weary brain. His racing thoughts slowed, the knot of anxiety in his chest loosened. He looked up at her, truly looked at her, and saw not just an ally, but a woman of extraordinary grace and strength. The soft glow of the console lights caught the shifting colors in her eyes, which were not one single hue, but a mesmerizing blend of amethyst and sapphire. Zephyra, he began, his voice husky. She met his gaze, her own eyes filled with an emotion he was beginning to recognize, an echo of what he felt stirring within himself. Jericho, she whispered, her name a soft melody on her tongue. The distance between them vanished. He didn't know who moved first. But suddenly her face was close to his, her unique, faintly metallic scent filling his senses. He could feel the subtle warmth radiating from her skin. His hand, acting on an impulse that bypassed his usually overthinking brain, rose to cup her cheek. Her skin was incredibly smooth, like polished agate yet yielding alive. The iridescence there deepened to a warm blushing rose under his touch. Your skin, he murmured, fascinated. It's incredible. A small, shy smile touched her lips. It reflects what is within, Jericho, and what is around me. Her gaze dropped to his lips, then back to his eyes. And you, Jericho Code, are a most compelling phenomenon. He leaned in, and she met him halfway. Their lips met, a tentative exploration that quickly deepened into a kiss that was both alien and intimately familiar. Her lips were soft, yet had a subtle resilience, and tasted faintly of ozone and something else, something uniquely Zephyra, clean and pure like starlight. A shiver ran through him, not of cold, but of profound connection. He felt a faint, pleasant tingling sensation spread from the point of contact, a subtle energy exchange that was both exhilarating and deeply comforting. Her arms went around his neck, her metallic skin cool against the back of his neck at first, then rapidly warming, radiating a gentle heat that enveloped him. When they finally broke apart, breathless, the small cockpit seemed to hum with a new energy. The universe outside, with its dangers and uncertainties, faded for a moment, replaced by the universe they had found in each other. Jericho struggled for words, his usually articulate mind momentarily blank. I didn't expect this. Zephyra's eyes shone, her skin now a vibrant, glowing tapestry of rose, gold, and pearl. Nor I. But perhaps the most unexpected unions are the strongest. She traced the line of his jaw with a delicate finger. We were betrayed by our own kinds, Jericho. Forced together. But what we are building now, this is a choice. He covered her hand with his own, their fingers intertwining. Yes, he said, his voice filled with a conviction he hadn't felt in years. It is. Their newfound connection solidified their resolve. They were no longer just running. They were fighting for a future for each other, and for the galaxy that the Veridian Shroud threatened to plunge into an era of controlled illusion. They learned that the Shroud's leader, a shadowy figure known only as the Chronomancer, was obsessed with the Nexus, believing it held the key to rewriting history and establishing an immutable, perfect, order under Shroud dominion. The Mind Hive Core, they discovered through another perilous intercept of Shroud communications, was an ancient alien artifact, a psychically resonant crystal lattice capable of amplifying and focusing consciousness on a planetary scale. The Shroud intended to use it to forcibly link minds to their fabricated narratives, making their illusions indistinguishable from reality, and then use that collective psychic energy to seize control of the Nexus itself. They planned to use the Argos Prime skyhook, Jericho announced grimly one cycle, pointing to a schematic he'd managed to reconstruct from fragmented Shroud data. Argos Prime was a major commercial and defensive hub in the Attican Traverse. Its orbital tether a colossal feat of engineering, connecting a massive station in geosynchronous orbit to the planet below. The skyhook's energy systems are powerful enough to amplify the Mind Hive Core's broadcast, and its orbital position provides a stable anchor point for whatever they plan to do with the Nexus. The Argos Prime skyhook. Zephyra breathed, her skin paling to a worried silver. It's one of the most heavily defended installations in this sector. Approaching it, let alone stopping the Shroud there, will be nearly impossible. Jericho finished for her. But we have to try. If the Shroud succeeds, there will be no truth left to fight for. Their journey took on a new urgency. They needed allies' resources. Using Jericho's knowledge of fringe networks and Zephyra's subtle diplomatic influence, even without official standing, her innate ability to foster trust was potent. They managed to make contact with a small, scattered resistance movement, composed of individuals and species who had also suffered at the hands of the Veridian Shroud. Among them were a gruff, four-armed Groknar freighter captain named Borak, whose fleet had been decimated by Shroud piracy, and a brilliant, eccentric Talitian data weaver named Lyra, whose species communicated through complex bioluminescent patterns, a language Jericho found utterly fascinating. The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. They would use Borok's heavily armed, if somewhat dilapidated, freighters to create a diversion, drawing away the bulk of the Shroud's fleet defending the skyhook. Meanwhile, Jericho and Zephyra, aboard the nimble but unassuming Stardust Drifter, accompanied by Lyra who could interface with the skyhook's ancient security systems, would attempt to infiltrate the station and reach the Mind Hive Core before the Shroud could fully activate it. As they prepared for the confrontation, Jericho found himself looking at Zephyra with a mixture of pride and fear. She had grown so much from the overwhelmed diplomat whose powers had run rampant on Xylos. Now, her control over her weather manipulation abilities was refined, almost artistic. She had learned to channel her emotions, her focus sharpened by their shared purpose and their deepening love. She practiced creating localized energy shields, precise bursts of lightning, even small, controlled shifts in atmospheric pressure that could disorient or disable. Her life sculptor ability, though still draining, she used judiciously to keep their small band of rebels patched up. "Are you afraid?" he asked her, the night before they were due to arrive at Argos Prime. They were in the Drifter's small common area, the star-dusted void pressing in from the viewport. Zephyra turned from the window, her skin a calm, deep sapphire in the dim light. She took his hands. "Yes," she admitted, "but not for myself. I fear what will happen if we fail. And I fear losing you, Jericho." Her metallic fingers tightened around his. "You have shown me what it means to connect. Truly connect, even in the face of such darkness. You have deciphered the language of my heart when I thought it was forever shuttered." Jericho's own heart swelled. His neurotic tendencies still surfaced, the what-ifs and worst-case scenarios still playing out in his mind, but now they were tempered by her presence, by the unwavering strength of their bond. "We won't fail," he said, his voice firm. "And you won't lose me. We face this together, whatever happens." He drew her close, and she rested her head against his shoulder, her opalescent hair cascading over his arm. Her skin, warm and vibrant against his, felt like home, a concept he hadn't truly understood until she entered his life. The Argos Prime skyhook was a breathtaking, terrifying sight. A colossal ribbon of exotic matter, impossibly thin yet strong, stretched from the cloud-swirled surface of the planet below to a sprawling orbital station teeming with lights and docking arms, a city in the stars. Shroud cruisers, sleek and black, patrolled its perimeter like predatory sharks. As Borok's freighters, retrofitted with salvaged heavy weapons, jumped into the system, all hell broke loose. Explosions blossomed in the void as the Groknar ships engaged the Shroud defenders, a chaotic ballad of energy beams and flak. Under the cover of this fierce engagement, the Stardust Drifter, running silent, slipped through the outer defensive net. Lyra, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with complex light patterns, as she interfaced with the station's network, guided Jericho through a little-known maintenance conduit. Her light speech translated by a device Jericho had quickly cobbled together. They docked in a deserted cargo bay deep within the skyhook's superstructure. The air was cold, filled with the low hum of powerful machinery. Shroud troopers patrolled the corridors, their movements disciplined, their presence chilling. The Mind Hive Core is located in the station's central observation dome. Lyra projected through the translator, her light patterns shifting rapidly. It's heavily guarded. The chronomancer himself is overseeing its activation. Their infiltration was a tense, nerve-wracking affair. Jericho's knowledge of security systems and Lyra's hacking skills allowed them to bypass most patrols and automated defenses. Zephyra, her senses preternaturally sharp, often warned them of approaching guards or hidden traps, her skin flickering with subtle premonitions. Twice, they were forced into direct confrontation. Jericho, surprisingly adept with a stun pistol, used his analytical mind to predict enemy movements. Zephyra, her weather powers now a focused weapon, created localized vortexes of air to scatter troopers, or short-circuited their equipment with precise electromagnetic pulses. Her species diplomat ability even had an unexpected effect on a Shroud comms officer they surprised. The man, momentarily caught in the subtle empathic field she projected when under stress, hesitated just long enough for Jericho to disable him non-lethally. It was a fleeting glimpse, but it hinted that not all Shroud members were unthinking fanatics. Finally, they reached the entrance to the central observation dome. The massive doors were sealed, guarded by elite Shroud sentinels in enhanced armor. Beyond those doors, they could feel a sickening psychic pressure, a discordant hum that set Jericho's teeth on edge and made Zephyra's skin ripple with agitated, clashing colors. The Mind Hive Core was active, its influence beginning to spread. "This is it," Jericho said, his heart pounding. "Lyra, can you get these doors open?" Lyra's bioluminescence intensified, attempting override. They are heavily shielded, but their primary focus is on the core's activation sequence, not external breaches here. As Lyra worked, Zephyra stepped forward, placing herself between Jericho and the guards. "I will hold them." Her skin began to glow with an intense silver-white light, the air around her crackling with power. Tiny motes of frost formed on her metallic hair. She was gathering her strength, preparing to unleash a storm. The doors hissed open. Inside, the observation dome was a vast cathedral-like space, its transparent ceiling revealing the dizzying panorama of Argos Prime below and the star-strewn void above. At its center, Suspended in a web of energy conduits, pulsed the Mind Hive Core, a colossal, multifaceted crystal, easily 10 meters across, glowing with an unholy, shifting light. Its psychic emanations were almost unbearable, a cacophony of distorted thoughts and emotions designed to overwhelm and enslave. Shroud technicians scurried around its base, making final adjustments, and on a raised platform, observing the core with an expression of raptorial triumph, stood the chronomancer. He was tall, clad in flowing black robes that seemed to absorb the light, his face hidden by a shimmering, illusion-cloaked visor. "Intruders!" a Shroud commander shouted, spotting them. "Shield the dome! Too late!" Jericho yelled, charging in, his stun pistol firing. Lyra followed, making a dash for a nearby master control terminal. Zephyra met the first wave of Shroud guards at the doorway. With a cry that was part defiance, part primal power, she unleashed the storm. Not the chaotic tempest of Xylos, but a controlled, devastating manifestation of her will. A miniature blizzard erupted around her, ice shards peppering the Shroud troopers, their armor frosting over. Lightning arsed from her fingertips, striking down guards with precision. The temperature in the immediate vicinity plummeted, making the advanced weaponry of the Shroud sputter and fail. Jericho fought his way towards the Mind Hive Core, his mind battling the disorienting psychic static it emitted. He could feel alien thoughts, false memories, trying to claw their way into his consciousness. He focused on Zephyra's voice, echoing in his memory, "Your mind is a storm of its own, let it be still." He pushed back his own tormented genius, his ability to see patterns in chaos, providing a desperate defense against the core's influence. The chronomancer turned, his visor glinting. "Fools. You cannot stop the dawn of the new reality." His voice was synthesized, chillingly devoid of emotion. He gestured, and a wave of pure psychic force, a concentrated illusion of despair, slammed into Jericho, sending him sprawling. "Jericho!" Zephyra cried, seeing him fall. She redoubled her efforts, pushing the Shroud guards back, but they were too many. Lyra reached the terminal, her light fingers flying across the interface. "I'm in. The core's control system, it's ancient, but I can disrupt the resonance frequency. But it will take time." Jericho, gasping, pushed himself up. The illusion of despair still clung to him, a heavy shroud of hopelessness. He saw Zephyra, fighting valiantly but being overwhelmed. He saw Lyra, desperately working against the clock. He saw the Mind Hive Core pulsing, its light growing stronger, threatening to engulf everything. He was just an exo-linguist, slightly neurotic, hopelessly out of his depth. Then he remembered Zephyra's touch, the warmth of her skin, the unwavering belief in her eyes. He remembered the echo crystal, the shared understanding. This wasn't just about stopping the Shroud, it was about protecting the future they had begun to dream of. Love, he realized with a startling clarity that cut through the psychic fog, was its own kind of reality, more powerful than any illusion. He surged to his feet, his mind suddenly clear, his purpose absolute. "Chronomancer," he yelled, his voice ringing with unexpected authority. "Your new reality is a lie, and lies always shatter." He dodged another psychic blast, his movements fueled by adrenaline and a desperate, brilliant idea. The core was a resonator. It amplified thought. What if he could introduce a paradox, a linguistic and logical feedback loop that its ancient programming couldn't resolve? He sprinted towards the core, not to attack it physically, but to get within range of its primary input conduits. Zephyra, seeing his intent, created a corridor of swirling wind and ice, shielding him from Shroud fire. She was expending enormous energy, her metallic skin dimming, flickering like a dying ember, but her eyes blazed with determination. "Lyra now!" Jericho shouted. "When I give the signal, flood its core programming with the most complex, recursive linguistic paradoxes you can generate. Concentrate on concepts of infinity and self-referential negation. Understood?" Lyra's light patterns flashed in acknowledgement. Jericho reached the base of the Mind Hive Core. The psychic pressure was immense, threatening to tear his sanity apart. He closed his eyes, focused his entire being, his lifetime of study in alien languages, alien modes of thought, into a single, concentrated mental projection. He didn't try to fight the core's power. He tried to speak to it, in its own resonant language, feeding it the seeds of its own undoing. "Now, Lyra!" "No." Lyra slammed her light fingers onto the activation rune. Simultaneously, Jericho projected his complex, mind-bending linguistic constructs directly into the core's energy stream. The colossal crystal shuddered. Its unholy light flickered, turning from a steady pulse to a chaotic strobe. Discordant shrieks of psychic energy erupted from it. The shroud technicians screamed, clutching their heads, their own minds caught in the feedback loop. The chronomancer staggered, his illusionary visor flickering. What are you doing? Giving your perfect order a taste of infinite chaos. Jericho gritted out, pouring every ounce of his intellect, his will, into the assault. The Mind Hive Core began to crack. Fissures of pure, white light spread across its crystalline surface. The psychic pressure abruptly reversed, sucking energy inward instead of broadcasting it. The illusions across the dome wavered and died. Zephyra, seizing the moment, unleashed a final, devastating blast of lightning that struck the chronomancer's platform, sending him tumbling. With a deafening implosion of sound and light, the Mind Hive Core shattered into a billion glittering fragments, its power extinguished. A wave of pure, clean silence washed over the dome, the oppressive psychic hum finally gone. The immediate aftermath was a scene of stunned chaos. The remaining Shroud troopers, their minds freed from the Core's influence and their leader incapacitated, seemed disoriented, their aggression fading into confusion. Some even dropped their weapons. The Skyhook's internal security systems, no longer suppressed by Lyra's override or the Shroud's control, began to reactivate, klaxons blaring, containment fields flickering into life. Jericho collapsed to his knees, every nerve ending screaming from the mental exertion. His head felt like it had been split open and reassembled incorrectly, but he was smiling. They had done it. Zephyra rushed to his side, her own energy nearly depleted. Her skin was a dull, exhausted pewter, but her eyes shone with fierce pride and overwhelming relief. She knelt beside him, her metallic hand gently cradling his face. Jericho, you were magnificent. Well, we were. He managed, leaning into her touch, finding solace in its familiar coolness, which was already beginning to warm. He saw Lyra. Her bioluminescent patterns dim but steady, giving them a thumbs-up gesture or its Talisian equivalent from the control terminal. Borok's voice suddenly crackled over Jericho's comm unit, patched through by Lyra. Stardust Drifter, this is Borok. We've routed the main Shroud fleet. What's your status? Did you stop that infernal machine? We did, Borok. Jericho replied, his voice raspy. The Mind Hive Core is neutralized. The chronomancer is down. A cheer erupted over the comms. Soon coalition forces, alerted by Borok, and the sudden cessation of the Shroud's command structure, began to arrive at the Skyhook, securing the station and rounding up the remaining Shroud operatives. Commander Valerius himself, looking wary but relieved, was among the first to enter the dome. He saw Jericho and Zephyra, surrounded by the glittering dust of the shattered core, and for a long moment, he simply stared. The accusations, the betrayals on Xylos seemed a lifetime ago. Code, Valerius said, his voice gruff but with a new note of respect. It seems we owe you an apology and an explanation. The orders for your arrest, they came from a compromised channel, planted by Shroud infiltrators within high command. Jericho nodded slowly, the pieces falling into place. The simultaneous betrayals hadn't been a coincidence, they had been orchestrated. Zephyra, leaning heavily on Jericho for support, looked towards a group of Sha'Nari who had arrived with the coalition forces. These were not Kalen's faction, but emissaries from the true Sha'Nari conclave, their iridescent skin glowing with concern and relief. One of them, an elder with skin like polished silver, approached her. Ambassador Ursa. We received your hidden distress signal, the one woven into the fabric of the storm you created on Xylos. Kalen and his followers have been censured. They will answer for their treason. Tears like liquid starlight welled in Zephyra's eyes. My people, they did not all abandon me. Never. The elder affirmed, placing a hand on her shoulder. Your courage and that of your human companion has saved more than you know. In the quiet that followed the storm of battle, Jericho and Zephyra found themselves in a medical bay aboard a coalition cruiser. He was being treated for severe mental exhaustion, she for acute energy depletion. They lay on adjacent biobeds, their hands clasped tightly between them. So, Jericho said, a tired smile playing on his lips. An exo-linguist and a weather manipulator saved the galaxy from a truth-suppressing regime by weaponizing paradoxes and localized blizzards. Sounds like a terrible holonovel. Zephyra's laughter was soft, like wind chimes. Her skin was slowly regaining its luster, shifting from pewter to a gentle lavender. Perhaps. But it's our story, Jericho. She squeezed his hand. We faced the storm within and without, and we found this. Her gaze was filled with a love so profound it made his heart ache in the best possible way. This, he repeated, his voice thick with emotion. Across the stars, fighting for love and new life. He knew with absolute certainty that their journey was far from over, but whatever came next, they would face it together. Their unexpected union, forged in betrayal and tempered in the crucible of galactic conflict, had not only saved them, but had also, perhaps, lit a beacon of hope for a universe desperately in need of it. The whispers of the nexus of reality still lingered, a mystery for another time, but, for now, they had earned their peace. Months later, under the soft, twin suns of Shan, Jericho Code stood beside Zephyra Ursa in the heart of a crystalline city that hummed with life and light. He wore ceremonial robes of woven starlight silk, a gift from the Sha'Nari conclave. Before them, an assembly of Sha'Nari, their iridescent skins shimmering in 1,000 hues, watched with quiet reverence. The Sha'Nari elder who had greeted them on the sky hook stepped forward, holding a magnificent echo crystal, larger and more radiant than any Jericho had ever seen. It pulsed with a warm, golden light imbued with the collective gratitude and respect of the Sha'Nari people. Jericho Code. The elder intuned, his voice resonant. For your courage, your intellect, and your unwavering support of our daughter, Zephyra Ursa, in the face of unimaginable darkness, the Sha'Nari conclave bestows upon you the Star Weaver's prism. May it forever echo the bond between our species, a testament to understanding forged across the void. He placed the crystal in Jericho's hands. It felt warm, alive, thrumming with goodwill and a deep, abiding peace. Jericho, usually so prone to neurotic self-deprecation, felt a wave of genuine pride and humility. He looked at Zephyra, her opalescent skin glowing with love and happiness, and knew this honor was as much hers as it was his. A few weeks later, the scene was mirrored, though the setting was vastly different. In the grand hall of the Human Interstellar Federation on Earth, Zephyra Ursa, resplendent in a gown that seemed spun from captured nebulae, stood before the assembled human dignitaries. Her natural Sha'Nari iridescence outshone any human finery. Jericho, now a celebrated figure, a tormented genius, no more but a hero, stood proudly in the audience. The Federation president, a woman with kind eyes and a firm resolve, stepped forward. Ambassador Zephyra Ursa of the Sha'Nari, for your extraordinary bravery, your unique abilities that bridged not only communication but also conflict, and for your unwavering dedication to truth and alliance in the face of the Veridian Shroud's tyranny. The Human Interstellar Federation awards you its highest honor, the Order of the Valiant Heart. You have shown us that even across the vastness of space, courage and compassion speak a universal language. A medal, crafted from rare Terran gold and Silosian sapphire, was placed around her neck. Zephyra inclined her head, her voice clear and melodic as she accepted. This honor I share with Jericho Code, whose brilliance and heart showed me the true meaning of partnership. Together, we learned that our differences are not barriers, but bridges to a richer understanding. Later that evening, on the balcony of their shared quarters overlooking the sprawling, glittering lights of Earth's capital, Jericho and Zephyra stood side by side, the cool night air a pleasant contrast to Shan's warm breezes. He held the Star Weaver's prism, its golden light casting soft shadows. She wore the Order of the Valiant Heart, its sapphire catching the starlight. Mutual respect officially sanctioned, Jericho mused, a rare, easy smile on his face. Zephyra leaned her head on his shoulder. Her skin, a calm, contented pearl, radiated a gentle warmth. It is a good foundation for what comes next. And what does come next, Ambassador Ursa? He asked, his arm around her waist. Perhaps exo-linguist code, she whispered, her lips brushing his ear. We continue to translate the language of the stars together. Perhaps we ensure that no other regime can suppress the truth, that no other species feels the sting of betrayal we endured. She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the myriad stars above. And perhaps, she added, a soft, rosy blush gracing her cheeks, we explore the concept of new life, in all its fascinating permutations. Jericho's heart soared. The future was vast, unknown, but with Zephyra by his side, it was a future he embraced with all his being. Their storm had indeed brought them to an unexpected shore. But together, they had found not just calm, but a radiant new dawn, a love story written across the stars, a testament to an unexpected union that had, against all odds, fought for and found its own extraordinary new life. The universe was wide, and their journey was just beginning.